Hi and welcome to a very special IFA Insight. With me today is someone that needs no introduction in financial services circles, Assistant Treasurer Arthur Sinodinos. Senator, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be with you.
I'd like to start with the amendments to the FOFA legislation. Obviously warmly welcomed by those in the financial services industry to a large extent. Large cost-saving measures, red tape reduction measures. From a government policy perspective, why did the legislation as it was need to change?
Well, from our perspective in opposition, we'd had the benefit of coalition senators going through the previous government's legislation when there was a parliamentary committee, and the coalition senators produced a dissenting report which had about 16 recommendations for improving the legislation by reducing the red tape that we saw associated with it. Our basic issue is that we want the consumer protection of FOFA, but without the costs that Labor put into the system. And so what we've done is take measures, reduce those red tape and related costs, reduce the compliance burden on advisors and others, and thereby reduce the potential cost impact on consumers. Because unless we have affordable financial advice, less people are going to be getting appropriate advice, and that's not good for planning for their future with certainty.
So if it's about raising the number of people that are getting access to advice, would the government be open to other sorts of incentives, say tax deductibility?
You can often look at things in isolation and say, well, that sounds a good idea on its merits because there are social costs and benefits from doing it, or economic benefits from doing it. But the challenge for us in the period ahead is that we have to look at the budget as a whole. And when I and Joe Hockey and others sit down and look at the state of the budget, our focus has to be over the next 12 to 18 months putting in place the measures to get the budget back into surplus in a reasonable time frame, and that does mean it's very hard to commit to new measures. Peter Costello used to say that the best saving we will make is the spending you don't undertake. It's often the easiest decision to make as well. So for us, I'm not contemplating tax deductibility financial advice at this stage. What I am contemplating is continuing to work with the industry to raise standards, to implement the legislation that we've got, make sure the savings in the legislation get passed on to consumers, and from there we have as many people as possible getting affordable advice.
You've just mentioned a number of areas in the financial advice space that you said the government's interested in reviewing. Among them you mentioned PI insurance for financial advisors, also education levels, and possibly the financial ombudsman scheme.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that review and how that might take shape?
Well, we're still thinking about the way the review might be conducted. We're not wanting to go out there and announce a full-blown, very formal review. What I really was setting out was a work program with industry, because it'll be in consultation with the stakeholders around issues like the cost and availability of PI, the issues around education standards and how you formalise those. ASIC and others have proposed a national exam. We haven't sort of put our hands up immediately for measures like that. We want to talk to the industry about that. So there's a whole slew of issues, financial ombudsman service, where again, we're not looking to make radical change, but we are willing at this stage to at least establish what is the case against some of the operations of the financial ombudsman service and what are the best ways to remedy any proven problems.
Self-managed superannuation is an area that's obviously increasingly important to financial services businesses, but also something that's being spoken of more readily amongst the wider public. In a very broad sense, does the government think self-managed superannuation has been a good thing for the economy, has been a good thing for the superannuation system?
On one level, you'd have to say it's a free country, so if you decide you're going to manage your super yourself, you should have that opportunity. The fact that people in increasing numbers have voted to do so suggests that they're keen to manage their own financial affairs and that they're keen to, if you like, have more control over the decisions which have previously been made in their name. Part of it was a response to the global financial crisis. Part of it was the fact that people are starting to get bigger and bigger potential retirement incomes, and for them they become more and more concerned about how those potential retirement incomes are going to be generated and ultimately allocated. So there's a lot of good reasons why it's developed. From a Liberal Party point of view, if I'm being crassly political, we love the philosophy of people who are taking decisions and taking responsibility for themselves. That's why it's got a separate light touch regulatory regime, principally through the tax office. We're not looking to formalise the sector in the way that we have the APRA regulated funds. It's horses for courses. So we keep an eye on the sector. We want the sector to grow and prosper within a context where Australians have proper choice between doing things for themselves or doing things through other types of superannuation funds.
Paul Howes from the Australian Workers Union has likened SMSFs to mortgage-backed securities in the United States and said, the sector's heading towards some sort of calamity. Where does the government stand on a compensation levy for the SMSF sector, for those investors who might be aggrieved?
Our philosophical position is that it's a light-touch regulatory regime, and therefore people have responsibility for their financial decision-making, and that's not up to government to compensate them and potentially create a moral hazard which encourages excessive risk-taking. I mean, the real answer to Paul Howes is that people like him prefer the money to be tied up in industry funds where people like he make decisions in the name of their members. Well, we want a system where the members drive the change, and that's why we want the fund governance sorted out so industry funds and other funds have more independent directors on there and there is more member power. We want people power in industry funds and other funds. We don't want union power.
And is that one of the main intentions of the Murray inquiry?
Well, the Murray inquiry is a holistic inquiry into the financial services sector, but yes, the superannuation sector is an important and growing part of our overall savings pool and of our overall financial system. So the decisions that are made by superannuation trustees and by asset managers and others in their name have very important implications for capital allocation within Australia. So we want a system of retirement incomes where people are confident about, it's got stability, it's got certainty, so people can plan confidently for their future.
Senator, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Alex.
Cheers.